Up, everybody? Happy Labor Day weekend. Thanks for tuning in to another edition of the Ad Podcast. Before you guys go and catch a long weekend, we have an exciting guest for you guys today. Morgan Mclintic is the CEO of Firebrand Communications, which is an agency focused on tech and startups. And prior to that, he was founder of the U.S. division of Lewis, a communications agency that grew to over 600 people globally, 75 million in yearly revenues, working with clients like AARP, Mozilla, and British Telecom. And he is also the host of the Fired Up podcast, a show that he interviews marketers and entrepreneurs around the startup industry and the startup community. So Morgan, always great to have another podcaster on. This should be easy, right?
Yeah, great to be here. Thanks for inviting me on. Looking forward to a great discussion today.
Yeah, let's go. All right, so we always like to kick it off with a little bit of an origin story. So tell me a little bit about where you grew up, where'd you go to school, and what got you into the communications industry originally?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can probably tell I'm a Brit. Grew up there, and I studied marketing at Nottingham University. But my first job in this industry was in a PR firm in the UK with just 10 people. So there's lots of small agencies like that. I joined one. It was tech focused. So my background is in PR for technology companies. And we grew that firm up to be the biggest tech PR firm in the UK. And at one point, it's about 24, 25, they said, hey, who wants to go over to the US and grow our US division? So I stuck my hand up and came over and, won the first few clients. Did the full startup thing, literally building the desk and, hooking up the internet, all the full, right at the start. And so then we grew that firm up. And when I left, as you said, about 600 people, about 250 people in the US. We made 3 acquisitions during that time, which was a brilliant experience, learning how other agencies work. And then after that, what I'm doing now is I run a new agency called Firebrand. It's a growth marketing agency. We work with startups, scale-ups, and tech companies, help them build their brand and drive demand. So it's this is a boutique. There's about 20, 25 of us. So that's also a lot of fun.
Yeah, I bet. Well, I can't wait to get into talking about what you're doing at Firebrand. I want to spend a little bit of time at Lewis. So your guys' North American office is in San Diego as well, right?
That's where we started. That's where we started. And in 98, I was there. I think I landed on Super Bowl Sunday when the Chargers were in. But yeah, we grew. So we have an office. We had an office there. It was brilliant. It's obviously a brilliant place to live. But found myself. I'm based in San Francisco now, and I found myself sort of flying up here because you're working in tech. So we established an office up here, and then over in Boston, Washington D.C. Sort of expanded from there. But yeah, San Diego. What a wonderful place to be.
Yeah, well, I only mention it because that's where I'm based, and I was doing a 30 networking events in 30 days challenge on my LinkedIn, and the Lewis team actually caught wind of it. And they're like, "Hey, you should come by our thing." And
brilliant, great. So. Yeah, they have nice, some nice offices downtown. So I was with that firm for 20 years, and so I feel like. Growing from 10 people to 600 people is a big transformation as we sort of rolled out globally. But I was there for a long time, and I know a lot of people in our industry jump from agency to agency and get different experiences. But I was lucky enough to kind of get that within the same firm, working with a bunch of people who it was great working with them.
That's awesome. And I think one of the acquisitions was Piston, which was John Hartman's shop, right?
That's right. That's right. So we bought 3 firms. One was a social media agency up here. Did some social media for SAP and VMware. We bought a firm over in Boston, 65 people, called DMG, was PR and marketing. And then, Piston, award-winning sort of design firm. Yeah, John Hartman, who it sounds like great guy. And sort of, they're more on the sort of advertising side. So, going from a PR agency, trying to sort of add other disciplines in, you learn an awful lot about how different agencies work, and an ad agency works in kind of a different way to a PR firm. So it was a great experience.
That's awesome. So you eventually made your way up to San Francisco after 18 years, which is, like you said, an eternity in our industry. I think I always thought I had long tenures with like my 5 and 7 year runs at the agencies that I was at, but definitely more of a company man up to that point. So what was kind of on your mind? What were the things that you were seeing and the opportunities that you were seeing that you wanted to jump out and start Firebrand?
Yeah, well, look, I was lucky with my last firm. You stand on an acorn, it grows into an oak tree, and you get to see that full journey. But as you get to work in a mid-sized firm like that, the skills that you need are different. And I like the sort of entrepreneurial speed of execution in a boutique. I felt that 20 years is a pretty good innings. It's time to do something new. And plus, I feel like, there's a few things, but I feel like, I wanted to see if I could do it again. Once you're lucky, twice you're good. And so I wanted to do it. And it wasn't my firm, it was somebody else's. I wanted to try and see if I could do that. And I feel like we're in a time where brands are happy to work with smaller firms, and wherever they can find the creativity and the expertise. And I felt like also I wanted to work. My last agency, global, multi-sector. This agency solves more of the problem for a smaller set of clients, and those clients are startups mainly. So it was time to learn something new.
Yeah, that makes sense. I started off my career with Howard Bragman. I was Howard Bragman's executive assistant at Bragman Nyman Caffarelli right before he sold it to Interpublic. And I went with him and started 15 Minutes. And I asked him why he sold, and it was like, hey, it was a great run, but I'm not doing PR anymore. I'm managing an HR plan, and I'm managing compensation. And as you kind of grow in seniority and size, you become more of a manager of people and processes than you do an actual PR practitioner. And I know
that's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. As you get a bigger firm, you're spending more time with the accountants and the attorneys than you are with clients. And much as I love our friends in finance, if you want to keep your skills sharp, you've got to be talking to clients, and you've got to be talking. PR, you've got to be talking to the media and seeing what ideas work, because a lot of strategy is informed by what actually works today. And so I wanted to get back close to that, something that I loved. And as you get, I think people's careers in an agency are often governed by you can sell your time, and then you need to be able to sell and manage the time of other people, and that's how you sort of rise up. But in that process, you do sort of distance yourself from the front, cutting edge of that. So you got to keep your skills sharp. You got to start again. And it was time for me to do that. And there are other people who are really excellent at talking to attorneys and finance people, and that operational level. And quite frankly, you do come to a ceiling where you're like, okay, this isn't something that I'm passionate about, and nor am I the best in the world to be doing it. So perhaps somebody else should. So I think there was a little bit of that as well.
That makes sense.
Being honest.
Yeah, whether it's PR or creative direction, our industry is the only industry that rewards success and competency by making you do less of the thing that you're good at and do more management of people, which is always an interesting dynamic.
Right, promoted to your level of incompetence, or whatever the expression is. Yeah, the expression is, we keep promoting you until you can't do the job, and then you stop. I think that's right. You can easily get distance, and it can be whether you're a great copywriter, and that doesn't mean you're a great manager. But you end up doing that because you're a valuable person. You have experience. So totally. We got to keep our skills sharp. So. That's painful, though. That's painful. That's a painful thing, because you've got to reinvent yourself a lot, right? You've got to, the skills that you are using today, many of the sort of tactical skills that you're using today become irrelevant And next year you won't be doing the things that I'm doing today. I'm sure that that you're doing are not what you used to do 5 years ago. And so
No, not at
you got to
all.
keep you got to keep running, and that's and there's a lot of brilliant people coming into our industry who may have just as much experience in, I don't know, AI, using AI than you do. In fact, maybe more. And so because they've had more time to deploy to it. So that's the challenge, but that's also the fun.
Yeah, no, I love it. All right, so Firebrand,
Hmm.
you launched with the idea of working with startups, tech companies.
Yeah.
Why the discipline and the focus around startups? Is that
Yeah.
just? I mean, I know Lewis is kind of B2B tech.
It has tech
Yep.
companies, but it was a mid-sized firm, so it doesn't get
Yeah.
to work with the small. Right. I mean, look, one of them is a practical sense that if you're a small agency, you can work with small companies because
Mm-hmm.
you don't have all the people to throw at it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think why startups for me, I feel like humans are innovative animals. Innovation makes tomorrow better than today. One of the areas of fastest innovation is in tech. Being amongst that and helping not just the companies who have got a great idea. You need more than that. You need great marketing to kind of make that idea come across. And so being part of that journey, I think is fun. And, personally, I like the speed of it and I like some of the complexity of it. So, for me, it's great. In my early career, I did healthcare PR and a company called Conan Wolf. It's a great firm. But I didn't really like talking about my cardiac infarctions and gizzards and all the other stuff. It wasn't fun, but it's still very worthy, right? So But for me, I like being a part of that ecosystem and working with those companies because we're doing stuff that companies are going to make tomorrow better than today, and that's a good mission.
Yeah, no, that's exciting. So, all right, well, let's talk about the dynamic of working with startups because I think it's
Mhm.
really interesting to focus on it. So,
Okay.
startups have a broad life cycle. There's seed stage
Yes.
startups, which are ideas and entrepreneurs with things up in their heads, and
Hmm.
they're starting to build minimum viable products, or they're coming out of accelerators, or seed style organizations, and then
That's
there's
right.
all the way up to Series D
Yeah.
in the startup journey. So obviously, much more risk with whether your client is going to have the money to pay you in 3 months or 6 months, or
Yeah.
even at all. So how do you define the startup in your mind that is like the right size, the right time to
Yeah.
start thinking about needing to take PR seriously?
Yeah, look, I think you can engage PR at any point. You're
Hmm.
trying to build what does a startup need? Needs nobody knows about it. Has a great proposition, but nobody knows who they are, and they need to sell their widget, and they need to hire people. They need to get partners. They need to get investors. PR. Is a great way to sort of build those relationships and build the brand. But it is an investment. And so, we certainly work with companies coming out of stealth. They're launching themselves to the world. Like the company might have been around for 3 or 4 years before they get to that point,
Hmm.
and it's quite a privilege to be part of the sort of unearthing, unveiling of that company. You're talking about the funding, you're launching the initial product. You're getting out there, showing the vision of the company. But the reality is that company is quite small, and you'll be working with the CEO probably, and that person, is an opportunity cost to the investment in PR. They've got to go and do founder-led sales and sell that widget to other people, and so you tend to that is a fun stage to be in. I say that the most common though tends to be once you've found product market fit, and they start to get a decent amount of revenue. Maybe they close their Series A, or B. They've got some customers, and they know who they are at that point. They might not have a PR manager. You might still be working with a VP of marketing, but you have customers, they have maybe one product that fits, maybe they're launching another one, they've got some customers, they've got some partners, they've got a bit of a vision, maybe they're starting to collect some data about, because why is a startup interesting? It is interesting occasionally because, hey, it got funding, and that, that's a moment in time, but it's interesting because it's an example of a trend. Hey, there's a type of AI company that is being founded, or here's a type of company that's, I don't know, doing return to the office, and it could be any company, but they're the example. But it's also interesting because of the data that they create, right? The metadata through their operations that you can kind of see. So from a PR perspective, you can do a lot of data storytelling with that stuff. As you get bigger, a seed stage company might be thinking they've got multiple products. They might be thinking about launching internationally. You've got a bit more complexity. And then, D plus, you're now thinking like this is an entity in its right. Like this is a company with a story in its own right. And it may be being a candidate for going public. And so there are reporters who want to cover that and build a relationship with that brand. It might be M&A, it might be buying other companies. And so, then you're into a much more sort of corporate type of campaign. But I would say, look, we've been going since 2016. Every client has paid us. It hasn't been a problem from that. So it's not that. I mean, look, startups do fail, but I don't see necessarily a difference between, from an agency perspective in terms of are you going to get paid, whether you're working with a seed stage company or a later stage company particularly. But, the nature of PR, the PR that you do really changes. And I like them all, but I would say most of ours are sort of in that A to C round, stage as they grow rapidly and before they, become, before they go public. Although we've got plenty of public companies too. Those are fun in a different way.
Nice. So, do you feel like those early stage tech CEOs, do they understand the value of PR the same way a PR practitioner or like a PR professional understands it? Because I've worked with startups too, not on the PR side, but on the influencer marketing side or the media side. And lots of them are obsessed with ROI. They're obsessed with measurability. And as much as I know PR works because I've been a practitioner and I've used it and I've hired agencies throughout my life, and I've also been a PR executive, I notice that sometimes it's the smallest companies that have the most, I guess, expectations around like, how is this working? Is it worth my time and money investment? Because a lot of times it's not just the money, it's the time that it takes for you to.
It's the time.
Yeah, you're doing backgrounds with journalists, you're popping on for news hits, or you're contributing to, stories, and they always come in last second and they always need the quote in 5 minutes.
Yeah, of course.
And then if you're getting into long form, if you're getting into thought leadership, it really requires a commitment to sit down and author great content and, work with your PR practitioner to generate thought leadership. So it's a big investment in time too.
It is.
Do you feel like the average CEO understands the value of that, or do you have to do a lot of education in order to kind of get the ROI calculation out of their head?
Yeah. Oh, well, I think they should always have the ROI calculation in their head at some point. An early stage founder of a technical company is often an engineer, right? They are a software developer who has not had who maybe doesn't have much background in marketing at all. I've certainly met founders who don't think that any marketing is worth, because having a better mousetrap is the solution, and it should sort of attract its own audience and be successful in the marketplace of ideas, if everything else being equal. But of course everything isn't equal, and so I'd say skepticism of marketing is healthy, but is common, and PR as part of that, is part of the promotion of the company. Absolutely, right? Particularly because attribution is a problem for every discipline in marketing, but especially in PR, and the whole measurement thing is a problem, because you can correlate, but you can't cause. Causation is very difficult. And so, it is a bit of an investment and a bit of a leap of faith. And, you sort of know it if you invest in that, you know it, and you can sort of, you can feel it when it's working. But in the early stages, hey, I'm answering these journalist inquiries, and so all my competitors, and they're not all converting, and I'm spending time on this. Yeah, I could be spending my time on something else. That sometimes gets hard to justify, and, quite rightly, and maybe other people should be commenting. So yeah, you do see that. You should see that. And measurement is hard. If I could have solved PR measurement, that would be wonderful, right? This would be a very different conversation. But we can get a lot closer to it. And I will say that PR, I've been doing PR for a reasonable amount of time, since the mid-90s, and during that time, it's died several times as the media goes down. It's when I started, like, there was 2 to 1 PR people to journalists. Now it's something like 8 to 1. 8 people chasing one poor journalist with their, hey, write about my client, right? The role has sort of broadened. So I'm simplifying a bit, but there's definitely been at times where people are like, okay, media is really under fire right now. Is this worth it? We PR people are having a bit of a celebration now, because we're back alive again. In fact, we've got an extra life with generative engine optimization, or the AI search, because one of the inputs from the citation sources, a third of the citation sources, according to some research, into ChatGPT, Perplexity, what have you, is coming from the media. And so, yes, people are reading the articles, and you should certainly circulate them and market them as much as you can. But also, it's going into ChatGPT. And so as traffic to websites, organic traffic to most websites going down 25%, from Google, and as all of our behavior, you probably see it for yourself, right? I'm searching on Google, you're typing it into ChatGPT. People want to make sure that they show brands need to be visible there, right? That's this whole GEO, generative engine optimization trend. Some people call it AIO. I mean, whatever you want to call it, it's an extension of SEO. But PR is part of that, right? And through this, so you, as a PR person, need to be aware of which publications are getting cited for your prompts. You can generate the prompts, you can work out what the citation sources are, and then you can target those publications specifically. And so PR practitioners have moved their desk a bit closer to the SEO practitioners, and where maybe they weren't that close before, and so PR has sort of found a new value, at least for now, until the weights change in ChatGPT again, or OpenAI, and something changes. But at the moment, there's a new justification for doing PR. The other thing that we're seeing a lot of demand for on PR is executive visibility, like promoting the CEO primarily. For a tech company, and I'm sure for a lot of brands, like, the CEO is the person standing on the mountaintop, looking the farthest with the vision, right? You can promote, they're an asset. You can promote that person, and I think this is driven by, perhaps the decline in X and the rise in LinkedIn, and the LinkedIn thought leadership ads, and et cetera, et cetera. If you flip open LinkedIn, there's people out there, but people buy from people, and it's normally the senior people. So executive visibility, that's what PR people call that sort of thought leadership piece, is 5 out of 5 of the last startups I've talked to have asked for that, and I would imagine that's true of a lot of other sectors as well. So, long answer to, PR people are feeling a little bit more spring in their step today than they were this time last year, which is
I think you brought up 2 really interesting points. You're the second. I had a podcast yesterday when we talked about this GEO, AIO. One of the things that they were focused on that the AI or the bots look at as well is reviews.
Yes.
And then understanding that those third-party citations through publications is also, like SEO is organic SEO is cratered because people aren't going to your website to do research anymore. They're going to AI to do their research.
That's right.
But then the demand is still there because if they see your brand, they're going to Google your brand and then find it and then go they're much more farther down the funnel because they've done their research in AI. So
that's right.
That's really exciting to hear that PR is a part of that. So
PR is a part. Yeah. I mean, if you look, 11% of the citations are owned sources. So that's your website. So, still produce all the content great content and optimize that. And there's maybe some things that you can do to make that owned content more amenable to ChatGPT, adding the FAQs, making sure they've got an author, just that Q&A kind of format they like, good schema markup. About 38% are other blogs and websites and influencers and analysts. So your paid influencer campaign, your analyst campaign, your competitors are shaping, what the competitor says about your brand on one of those like top 10, SaaS companies to whatever, like they're shaping what ChatGPT thinks about you. And then, another third of it is the media. But you're right, sites like the review sites, like Reddit, and like G2, and then the review sites like G2 Crowd or G2 Trust Radius, Gartner Peer Insights, Capterra, they're really having a moment at them, and so we're seeing a lot of companies want to sort of accelerate their profiles there. And I think affiliate marketing sort of comes into this because if you see a lot of the reviews are sort of paid, Forbes Advisor or what have you, they sort of look editorial, but they're sort of, that blend of paid and earned, it's not always quite clear. But so now this GEO is, I said that the PR person's desk is moving close to this SEO person, but also affiliate marketing, the content marketing. It's great because how do all those teams in a larger company, you've got teams of people doing all of those things. And now they all need to work together because if you're not in that search, you're invisible. And so you want to be there. And then the web guys are having a great time because when people come to your site, they are, as you quite rightly say, they're right in the middle of the funnel. Like they've done, I don't know, I'm booking my vacation, even if from a consumer, I've researched all this stuff and I'm coming onto the site and now I'm ready to book, right?
Yeah, you're ready to go.
Your brand experience needs to be great. You need to keep there's fewer people. You need to have plenty for them to do. And they need to be able to answer their questions and convert in a B2B sense. That journey is long and has more people. And so you need, your website is more important now than ever before, even if it's not getting the traffic. So I think these trends really are very exciting for us to keep across. And, but it's certainly changing buyer behavior. And that means that it's changing the way that we market to those buyers too.
Yeah, I love that. So the other thing you touched on is a topic that I love hearing about, which is the executive comm strategy. So how do you leverage LinkedIn specifically, but social, and also leverage your CEO or whoever your evangelist is on the team as a living embodiment of the brand and the company and the spokesperson for the company? So another thing that you mentioned is a lot of these startup founders, especially in Silicon Valley, these are engineers when they've kind of spun out their idea. So does it start with a foundational kind of media training to get these guys ready for the camera, ready for kind of the social work that they have to do through executive comms?
Yeah, I mean, look, you don't need to be on camera. I mean, I think you can work your way up for that. It's part of the role of a senior exec to be a spokesperson for the business. And so, because like I said, you're an asset and you probably have more experience than many others and more authority, and you probably talk to more customers and sort of closer to the trends. And so, not all senior execs love doing that. So I think they may be quite introverted, and it's like I'll do it, but it's it's a painful part. So I think part of from a comms perspective, you've got to identify people who love doing it, who like commenting, who are doing it. They do it whether they were paid for it to do it or not, and they like mixing it up in the comments, and they don't mind people disagreeing with them. Forcing someone to do this who doesn't. They'll always find another reason to go off and do something else, right? So number one is choosing the right spokesperson. Number two is, if you want to be a thought leader, you need leading thoughts. And we all love to think that we are sort of, far-seeing and insightful, but it turns out that we're insightful in the same way. And so you need a bit of a lens. Part of a PR's role, but this could be in-house, is to sort of go, okay, I've heard that, but these other people are saying the same thing, and push people a little bit to their logical conclusion so that you're saying something a little bit different that's going to engage your audience. And that can be hard, right? So you've got to sort of test it and sort of move that forward, because you might think, hey, this is really interesting, but nobody, it doesn't resonate. But so you've got to find your platform. And I think, and it's not just, I have one idea for one blog post or one podcast episode or whatever. And then you've got to get it out there. And LinkedIn is a great place. I would say, look, it's become, it has a lot of attention right now, but it's sort of over, there's so many AI comments, like we can all spot the AI comments in there. We can spot the AI posts, and we can spot the AI comments, and we're all getting a little bit sort of tired of that inauthenticity. So I don't know how long that will last, but at the moment it's a big focus. Talking on podcasts, going and being a guest, having your own podcast would be great, but it's not for everyone. As you've been doing this a long time. It takes the time to build an audience. You've got to do it on video, and that's not for everyone, etc., etc. Writing a regular column, right? Even just writing on their blog, they could do, just a constant flow of ideas. And not everybody has that, right? They don't have the time, and not everyone can write. So you can get help with that, but those are the sort of, and then you've got to go out and talk at conferences, and, and again, and maybe you'll get interview, do some media interviews. That's how you sort of start to build the profile of your sort of senior execs. It's not just putting a few posts up on LinkedIn and you're done. Although, because that's part of it. So I think it's, it's always been part of a PR program, but it's really having a lot of focus on it at the moment. So that's fun time.
No, I think you're right. Obviously I'm partial to podcasts as the thought leadership modus operandi, because that's what I do every day. But I think so how it came to be was, originally it was audio only. I just wanted to use it as a way to get and have conversations with people who were a little bit more smart than I was. But then our CEO of my last agency, when we were going kind of hard into B2B LinkedIn influencer marketing, she wanted us all to get top voices on LinkedIn back when you could kind of gamify it.
You could get that.
So we did, and but I didn't really love the act of writing as much as I did talking. So I was like, okay, I'll do it, but I'm going to do it over a podcast. I'm going to do a podcast instead of writing LinkedIn posts. And
when did you transition over to just to adding in video, and what was the impact of that?
Yeah, I mean, it was a big deal. So I guess it was probably during the pandemic I switched from audio to video, and there were a couple of key things that were insights for me. So one is, when it was audio only, I had endless time to do the post-production, because you can with audio you can get really good at taking out every little and ah and every glaring detail. You can make it perfect in audio, but that might take a long time. So there was this kind of I would have a really great interview with an exec, and then the PR person would hound me to get the post up, and then I would get it up 3 weeks later, and then nobody cared anymore, right? So it was like I was missing the point almost. So video, well, first, video by nature, you can't cut it as much because it looks jumpy. You can cut it a little bit, but you can't cut it endlessly. And When you go live stream, then it's actually immediate gratification. So everybody who's watching, at least for this portion of the interview, is watching it live on LinkedIn or 5 other social media platforms right now. And then once that video live stream ends, it archives as a VOD. And LinkedIn's algorithm gives favorability to live streams over other types of posts, so it will get more impressions and more views. So I think the instant gratification of having it available and being able to play a huge component, but also the lack of resources that you need to produce a show for post-production is a great benefit.
Yeah.
And then also, tricking the algorithm a little bit. And because there's not that many people streaming on LinkedIn.
No. And it's once you get it set it up, it's quite easy to do. And I think that's really interesting. And the other part of it that we have found is that an audio podcast is very difficult to build an audience for, right? We you listen to podcasts. I don't know how many you listen to. Maybe there are 10 that you listen to. You've only got a certain amount of time. And so in order to become one of those 10, you've got to knock someone else off. Right. And someone has got, and how do you what the discoverability is quite difficult for an audio podcast. Someone has to say, hey, do you listen to these guys? This is great. Or you have to sort of see it on social and then go, okay, and then listen to a few more. Whereas with video, YouTube is famously the second largest search engine. You are going to get a lot more. You get a lot more variety because people can find you on your topics, and so you have a whole range of different types of guests, and so people can discover you on YouTube in a variety of different ways, and I imagine that really boosts the audience. I think as you said, we have our podcast. We just hit 100 episodes, which was great.
Nice.
We're way behind you. We're way behind you. Thank you very much. But I wish I had started with video sooner because of that very discoverability. Maybe it's a good thing. You sort of get a little bit better after a while, I hope. But yeah, I now would advise anyone who wants to do the video, a podcast, to start with video. And video is sort of a top-down thing. You can cut that up and and use it as a podcast is a great sort of format to sort of drop into lots of other types of content formats. So I love that. But you're right at the front with the live streaming.
Yeah, you're totally right. And, YouTube is now the biggest platform for podcast listening.
Yes.
It's no longer
Spotify.
Amazing? So 75% of all podcast plays happen in video format. So the audio is really just for the car, which is a great captive time to have people. And I listen to some more news podcasts in the car. I listen to some B2B, but most of them are news format. But it's more the, leaning in, you're looking for something, you're looking for a topic. When you're at your desktop, I think that's when you're going to find long form B2B shows. And then, like you said, the most important component is thinking of podcasts as a production day, as an opportunity to walk away from a show with 5 to 10 cut downs that then go on social. And the social is where the real numbers get generated. Like I had a cut down at CES, a 90-second or a 59-second cut down at CES that did 90,000 views on LinkedIn. It was like, it was crazy.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. So let's talk a little bit about Fired Up. So you launched the show originally. Tell me about your thought process. Why did you want to get into podcasting? Was it curiosity or was it more tactical? A little bit of both?
A little bit of both. I think in order to advise clients, as I was saying before, you've kind of got to do it, and so sort of getting in there, I think is is helpful when you learn. Our podcast is about startup marketing and marketing for tech. So we bring in CMOs. These are people I work with. They're people I would like to work with. So it's good for building relationships. It's also we are part of our sort of brand persona is the sage, if you like, and so we like to help our community of people learn. And so asking smart people a few questions and then telling you the answers, you learn a lot as the host, but also it creates great content for our audience. So that was really why we wanted to do it. We wanted to build relationships with the people. it's a little bit of a demand gen thing. Sure, I came across you. We wanted to also learn about podcasting, but we also wanted to have some great content where people we could sort of talk about, hey, how do you create a category, or how do you use AI in copywriting, what have you. So those were our goals, and here we are. Sort of, you just got to keep going at doing it, and that then that's the game, I think.
Yep, totally. And then do you guys do remote shows? Do you guys take it on the road? Do you do it in a studio, or is it more kind of like what we're doing
we
today?
just do it. We do it remote, so we're not as brave as maybe you're going down to CES maybe someday that we're doing it. So yeah, ours is yeah. I haven't tried that yet, but but maybe during this next 100 we'll tackle that. But I think you're very brave to do it, especially something as wild as CES, or the background noise and that kind of stuff. But then you do get something very very real time, which I think is very authentic and fun.
Yeah, I think the real time nature is exciting. The fact that you have executives kind of herded together in one geography for a shorter window of time, it's easier to get, I would say, like the A-list guests at events, because they're kind of there for a period of time and they want to get as much done as possible. If you're official press for the conference, a lot of times it's a lot of times their comms people are actually reaching out to you to book. So it's not as hard running and chasing people down. And then I think also, we both got in our backgrounds of today of our home office situations, but it's always fun to have a backdrop where there's like lights and people walking by, and the equipment is getting so good. Like these little DJI or Rode mics. I use one called Lark, which is a magnetic pen. You almost can't even see it. You just like clip it to your collar. And how good those technologies are becoming to isolating audio.
The surround sound, yes.
Yeah, I did an interview with somebody at Gary V's convention, VCon in LA, and it was literally like a music festival going on around us, and it had perfect audio. So it's getting better and better. And then have you ever used this app called Peerspace? It's basically on-demand podcast studios like Airbnb.
So Peerspace, you can. Well, it's great for video, finding locations for video, right? Yeah. You can go on and book locations for photo shoots and all sorts of product shots or what have you. Yeah. But you can do. Yeah, I guess you could also do it for podcasts too.
Yeah, they have standalone podcast studios now, anywhere from $50 to $300 an hour. So if I'm in a city and I have a guest that I feel like the production value would be increased by, just grab a studio and then you've got.
Wow, I'm learning a lot. I'm learning a lot. Yeah, these are gold. These are gold. I got to get on the road. I got to get my Peerspace going. I got to get this little thing. I'm gonna, I'll have to. Yeah, we're just happy to have done video, right? You're the next level on this.
Well, hey, we all have to,
we got to start somewhere. We got to start somewhere.
Yeah, and I'm an evangelist of the format. I think every sales team should have a podcast. Every marketing organization should have a podcast.
Do you think that?
Yeah, I do. I truly do. I think it's now kind of table stakes for organizations because of how valuable it is. Like you talked about, let's be honest, like B2B podcasts, at the end of the day, they are ABM methodologies. They are ways for it's a value exchange with executives that people in a business development role would normally not get access to unless they had a relationship. So if that is the understanded value exchange, that you're going to meet somebody and they're going to become part of your professional network, what do they get out of it? They get content, they get exposure, they get platforming. What do you get out of it? You get great content, but most importantly, you get a net new relationship. If that's the understanding, and as long as that lasts, every sales team should be taking advantage of that. Now, not every salesperson is a great podcaster, but I guarantee if you have 5 salespeople, or certainly if you have 500, there's a podcaster in there waiting to break loose. And it gives your entire sales team a much more pitchy way to reach out to potential prospects
Yeah.
that are not like, what if your entire sales team was inviting C-levels to come on your podcast versus asking for demos? Then, you know, you would have a lot more positive responses from the first outreach opportunity than the second. So, you know, that's my soapbox. But
that's there we go, everyone. Podcasts for everyone. There's one for you, and there's one for you. Yeah, but that's definitely right. I mean, but you know, we'll talk about different topics, and like I mentioned, category creation, it often comes up, for example, or executive. We've done ones on executive visibility, and you know, or how to announce fundraising. Right, these are common beats. So we'll often, you know, cover the topics, and then we say, oh, we just talked about that on our podcast when we're talking to prospects, and so it sort of shows domain expertise, connections. So I think there's a validation around that. So in your very sort of practical sense there, that a sales team can use. So yeah,
I love that.
Here we are all cheering on podcasting. But I also think, though, from an advertising perspective, you know, it's becoming more formalized now, where you know you can programmatically buy adverts now on different podcasts to sort of build critical mass of audience, and so that makes it, you know, you're listening to someone between their ears, you've got their attention, and I think that's very powerful. Rather than, like, so it's becoming a bit more formalized than rather having to kind of go to individual podcasts and sort of negotiate some deal. You know, that just doesn't scale for a lot of brands. So I do think, from a marketing mix perspective, yes, producing one, but also just buying into those audiences is probably going to become quite much more common for brands.
Yeah, I think so. All right, so let's talk about another moment that PR might be having. So, you know, there's a lot of, I guess, you know, stats out there that traditional publishing is kind of in the tubes from a revenue perspective. You know, numbers are going down. You have a lot of these traditional places where PR firms might have gone to pitch clients, and the audiences are smaller and people care about them less and less. From then you think about a B2B perspective, but then you think about specifically, you know, the startup world. You know, the All In podcast is probably one of the biggest shows in the world, and it's
massive.
And it's not even, you know, just people tuning in anymore from the venture and the VC community. It's just the broader public at large, because they're interested in these topics. So does that change your calculus as a PR professional now? How much do you care about traditional publishing when you're trying to get your startup clients out there? Are you building a media list that is kind of traditional and new? And how much would you weight new media being the opportunity now?
Yeah, well, it's a great question. You know, buyers are, you know, we as individuals are consuming more news than ever before from multiple different, you're just getting it from more and more different sources. And so instead of sort of having that, you know, it's the same as, I don't know, broadcast TV, right? Like our attentions, in order to reach a demographic, or their attention has been spread out over a lot more publications. The national news, your New York Times, your Wall Street Journals, etc., still massively are still the top of the tree. They still shape opinion. And so any company that can get in there, and I think every startup's got a New York Times story in them somewhere, maybe multiple, that can shape their futures enormously. But, you know, you're right. The trade media in some areas is still thriving. You know, it can be horizontally, you know, HR and HR tech has just got a huge vertically cybersecurity, the robotics press, you know, storage. Like, there are pockets of trade press who are doing very well, thank you, and they may be propped up with a show. They may be having a great awards program, because awards are a great revenue driver for publications. So, you know, those guys are doing fine. They may also have podcasts, as we just talked about. So they may have different formats, but they still have the audience. And once you've got into those, then obviously, you know, you've got to be marketing you're going to market if they don't have the audience, but you've got your article, you've got to bring your article in front of the audience that you've got over social or in your email, or sent directly by your sales team. And so I think there's a lot of value in there. But it is true that a lot of publications are downsizing their editorial staff. Business Insider, TechCrunch, what have you, and a lot of those reporters now are setting up their own newsletters. So they have a personal brand, and they are going behind a paywall. And you have to pay, your $5 a month or what have you, to get access to that. Now, the readers of those are sort of still, you've got their attention, right? So you need to target them as a PR. So I think they're extremely important. Is a little bit harder to know what is the reach of this particular newsletter, because it's more opaque. They're not maybe not publishing that stuff as widely as possible. But yeah, I think definitely they are important. We're seeing a lot of clients want to be on podcasts, and so they recognize that there's a rising medium. And so how do you get onto them? Some are interview format and some are not, and some are more professional than others. Some are paid. Often you'll sort of say, in order to come on, pay the $2,000. So there's a little bit of that. But absolutely, I think if these channels are just as important. In fact, for some audiences, more important. So you just got to keep across it as it evolves. But it's a tough time to be in journalism right now, and so it's good to pay for good content. So that's what I say. So, you pay your $5 a month and support some reporters out there.
Yeah, I love it. And then what is your take on the rise of like the B2B influencer? So in addition to the executives doing their comm strategies, now you have this in LinkedIn, the specific designation around a top voice with the blue check. It still means something there versus all the other platforms where it's become something that you can pay your way into.
Yes, you just buy your blue.
Yeah. But in addition to that, even some creators on LinkedIn that don't have the blue check mark actually have way more followers, 200,000 followers in a given subject matter expertise, and they get way more engagement, way more views on their content. So these are creators that generally, maybe they work for a company, maybe they're a consultant or an expert or a thought leader or an author. They generally do things other than just create content on LinkedIn. But, there are becoming straight LinkedIn 100% B2B focused creators. How much is that a focus for what you guys are doing? Because, the PR space has PR owned influencers in the early days because it was looked at as earned. And then it kind of shifted to media because you're renting an audience. And then it shifted to creative because they were creating content. So there's always been a mad dash and a scramble, but it feels like in B2B, it feels like PR is probably pretty relevant place for it to be.
Yeah. I mean, look, you're trying to raise the sort of visibility and sort of, perception about a particular brand. You can do that through the media. You can do it through influencers. And, those could have been analysts. I mean, Gartner has a bunch of, people are leaving Gartner, their share price is going down. But those people are going to go off and be authoritative somewhere else, maybe driven by this sort of, trend. So I do think influencers are really important. And, it's been a big thing in consumer, and now it's a thing in B2B. As you said, the challenge previously was that a lot of these people, I'm an expert in cybersecurity, and I also work for a cybersecurity company. Maybe I'm the evangelist, and so, I have a following, but you can't buy me. I'm being paid by somebody else, or, or it would be difficult to access that person because they're a competitor. So, in fact, that's why they're being hired by that brand, perhaps. So, but there are now people who are unaffiliated, and they sort of have a, almost, it's easier to engage with them. They have a pricing sheet, and, it's obvious. I'm paying you. I'm sponsoring this video content, and you're going to produce it. And they're going to keep their independence, but, it's content for hire, and you're tapping into their audience. And so I think it's absolutely like paid influencer marketing is really important. And when we're seeing budgets get allocated towards that, it is still like difficult to engage with. Like, how do you find those people? The professionalism, I don't want to use that word, but the way that some are more formal to engage with others, like that here's my pricing sheet, here are the things I'm willing to do, here's the way you engage with them, the time, the feedback they give you, their processes. Some are more buttoned up than others. So discovery, engagement, and sort of visibility over price, and then sort of some kind of measurement are still things that are preventing it being happening at scale. But we see companies want to do that an awful lot. And hey, I'm having my talking to a company today. They're having a consumer conference. They're having their user conference. Maybe they should get some influencers to come. We want media to come. Media are going to come if they can get a story. Who else is going to come? Some influencers as well. Some of them they can pay to come and maybe can do a little, run a little roundtable or record some content. So I think this is part of the mix. And as I said earlier, double, you get extra whammy with this one, because if they publish the content, it's going to go into AI search as well. So that is still sort of in an early stage. But it's very much part of the mix here. So I think you're going to see a lot more of this over the next year.
Yeah, I think you're right. I just thumbed through all of the speakers for Inbound at HubSpot next week.
Oh yeah.
And I would say I saw 10 B2B influencers and only 2 or 3 traditional journalists, at least speaking on stage.
Right. The journalist, right. And why is that? Because the influencers are getting paid by going, and that's their outcome. The journalists are getting paid if they get the story, and are they going to get a story? And could they get that story by not going? And so, it's harder to get. It's just. And it's harder to get. Reporters are not always based in Boston and New York and San Francisco and LA anymore. But those are expensive places to live. They have maybe moved to other parts of the country where it's cheaper to live, and because they're under a lot of pressure, and so they're only going to come to an event if they can get multiple stories. And those few lucky are going to get multiple stories from that, and in exchange talk on the keynote. But the influencers there, this is the work product, right?
Totally makes sense.
This is how I'm being paid.
Yep. All right. Since you work with startups, do you guys ever take equity? Have you ever taken equity in a company that's worked out?
We don't, but I've been offered it so many times because, and some of them you're like, probably should have taken that. I think it's a strategic decision for an agency. You are going to get offered it if you're in this kind of space, and because it's basically the currency of a small company that doesn't have a lot of cash, and they have equity, and it's all potential. If you decide to do it, you need, as an agency principal, you need to do it on a sort of portfolio basis, because you never know which one is going to work out, and you're sort of then getting into a different business. You're becoming a sort of almost like a VC, and we haven't done it simply because we're relatively we're a boutique, and if I take equity, my staff are not being paid in equity, and their landlords are not being paid in equity. What they're being paid for is cash, and so we have cash is king for that. But I think it's definitely an interesting business model, and I know people who have run a small firm and got shares in WhatsApp and done very well out of Dropbox, and done very well out of that. In fact, done better out of that than in running their firm. And so
Wow.
it's certainly something that could work out, but it's not one that I've done yet. Maybe one day. I think you need to be very disciplined about it, and how do you value and how do you know which one to say yes to is not a is a discipline that I probably haven't got yet.
Totally, that makes sense. All right, so we talked a lot about how PR is becoming more important to the components of working and optimizing for AI. But have you come across any AI tools that you think are particularly transformative for the business of public relations? Is there anything out there that you feel like AI is being practically applied to more of the business side versus the outcomes that you're generating for clients?
Interesting. I'd say like the PR, so MarTech stack is pretty defined. PR stack is not. I mean, you're looking that most of those tools tend to be databases, right? Of media reporters, like reporters or podcast. There's one called Raphonic. Like Muckrack is the current, it's probably the best one on me. And they have some AI tools. Which are, no disrespect to this great company, but are underwhelming because they're trying to say, hey, I'm going to write a press release with a few, like it's an AI tool to sort of do a press release. So the answer to you, I would love to be, yes, there are, but in practice, it's the same kind of tools. It's ChatGPT and Claude and these sort of frontier model, things based on the frontier models that we're tending to use. Even if you look at a HubSpot with its Breeze tools, I don't know if you've used those on the content side. Sure, it can turn out some social posts from some other stuff, but are you really going to do that? You probably just do it yourself. And so, they're sort of a bit underwhelming, and I think we are. Just at the moment, we have a team called Firebrand Labs. We're looking at all these tools. We're pushing on them. We were early into using this ad creative.ai that can reformat ads. We are keen on using the tools. They are good for they're good for some things, research. They're good for making big content smaller. I'm doing an award and I want to, I've got to fill in the client's bio, but it's only got 400 words and, just making big things smaller, doing first drafts. There's some things that AI is wonderful at doing, and a lot of PR is about writing. And so we focused a lot on that. But, I think we are in a phase of elevated expectations from AI as people get into like, did it really save me that much time? And where is the right place to use AI? I can tell you, you could write, it's not going to be great at writing a byline, a thought leadership thing, because it's drawing on, general knowledge and what you're trying to look for something that's an edge. It can give you, some general blog content as first drafts and research. It absolutely shouldn't be used for media responses for a quote. And so, in fact, it's been a bit of a problem there where, you've got to make sure that what you're giving to the reporter is, what is the safe amount of AI-ness in a piece of content, right? You could use the AI, those AI checkers where, maybe in a blog post, it's a bit more than a media quote where the answer is 0% of this. It has to come out of a human brain. And so, you're seeing at the moment, a little bit, we looked at the stats of this recently, actually, people, they like AI written content until they realize it's written by AI, and then their trust goes down like 40% in that content because it's not going from one human brain into your brain. It's sort of coming, and you feel a bit sort of duped. And we're getting better at discovering that AI content. It's not just spotting M dashes, but the sort of steady cadence. It doesn't, the steady cadence, we're all getting much more attuned to it. It doesn't, you could use it in ad copy, but it doesn't. Ad fatigue is 3 times faster on the variations. They get flagged more for, for inappropriate ads, whether it's a search ad that you produced. They don't perform as much. Blog content performs 27% less. Like, if you look at the data from various surveys, AI content, whether it's an ad format, a website, web pages, website builders that are AI driven, 40% less sort of engagement on those websites because the copy, the layouts are generic. It's just not quite there yet. And so learning where to use it appropriately is the skill, and and sort of chaining different GPTs together, what have you. But yeah, so we're big fans on it. But I would say when it comes specifically to PR, PR is about creativity. It's about connections, and those are 2 things that you can't really sort of delegate to a bot.
Yeah, I like it. I love your take. Not only are you making a great case for skill set and creativity, but you're backing it up with stats on how all these things underperform when you actually get down to measuring it. So
Right.
for those who are
Right.
getting lazy with AIing everything, just keep that in mind.
Yeah. I mean, look, look, I work in an agency and a marketing agency. And so, marketing is changing enormously because of AI. And because the buyer behavior is changing. And so what are you going to outsource to an agency? Everything, we're all competing with, like the CFO wants, why can't I get it's happening a lot in tech, but I imagine it's happening everywhere. Why can't I get an AI to do this? Like, prove to me that AI can't do this. And so then you need to prove AI can't do it, and then you need to prove that this needs to be done by an agency, and so and not in-house. And so what is that intersection of can't be done by a bot, can't be done by in-house, or shouldn't really be done by in-house? And you sort of come down to so creativity. You can be creative in-house, but creativity, more brains are better than sort of one, more perspectives. It's connections. Who do you know? That's very clear in media, but it's clear in marketing, technology, because you're an integrations partner. It's clear in media because you've got all these media partnerships, what have you. But the connections are really important. And then it's expertise. Like this is just a really hard tool. Like, Google Ads is just a really complex tool to use. And so it's got so many little levers. So, most people are like, okay, I can do this, but I could do it badly. I'll let you do it. The last reason that people will outsource things is just sort of labor. That's the worst, right? Like, they could do it, but you're just doing it. That stuff's just got cut. So we definitely see, we need to, AI is a huge leverage, but it's also a bit of a competitor because it's sort of, you've got to rise above that, and so therefore you've got to prove that it's worth the investment. And so AI written content, does it rank in SEO? And Google doesn't care, but it does care about expertise and experience, etc. So it doesn't rank as well. So across the board, it doesn't quite rank as well. It doesn't perform as well. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't use it. There are some areas that good enough is good enough. And so we all have to we're all navigating this path to get the right balance here. I think that's kind of a threat, and it's also exciting.
100%. All right, Morgan, where should people go to learn more about your agency and to connect with you directly?
Wonderful. All right, so my agency is a company called Firebrand, firebrand.marketing. And the podcast is fired up. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts. You can reach me on LinkedIn, Morgan Mclintic, McLintic, and I'd love to talk to any of you, continue this conversation. Dylan, this has been brilliant, and I've really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you very much for having me.
Of course. Thanks for joining. And for those of you who are at home, if this is the first time you're seeing the show, don't forget to go ahead and give us a follow or a subscribe. If you are listening or watching on a podcasting platform, an honest review is how the show finds a bigger audience organically. And last but not least, if there is a PR practitioner at a brand or technology company, a startup that needs some help in the PR world, or somebody who would be inspired to start their own podcast, don't forget to share the show. And with that, Morgan, I will wish you a very happy and successful holiday weekend.
Wonderful. You